One of the most devastating and brutal arcs in pretty much all of current shonen has been the Shibuya incident from Jujutsu Kaisen. Characters are beaten to within an inch of their lives and bodies are hitting the floor left and right. It's not a stretch to say that the entire arc was deadlier than even some war arcs we have seen among the greats. So what happens if we take the deadliest arc and place one of the deadliest sorcerers into it? What if Yuta Okkotsu was in the Shibuya incident? I think everything up to the ceiling of Gojo would play out the same. Regardless of Yuta being there, I don't think it would make a major difference, and for one main reason: Kenjaku's intelligence. It's made it really clear that Kenjaku was able to manipulate almost the entire verse into walking into the exact circumstances he planned for consistently, as both Gojo and Mahito were seemingly defeated with ease without Kenjaku even having to lift a finger due to the sheer depth and accuracy of his planning. To put this into perspective, Mahito has implied numerous times to distrust Kenjaku and outright doubt his actions as what Ken says they are, yet still gets manipulated into doing what Kenjaku wants. And Gojo's 6 eyes are able to sort through every possibility, although this one is more subjective on what you actually think it means. The point is that Gojo is pretty wise for his age, yet still gets mentally farmed by Kenjaku pretty much for an entire year, as almost everything that happened up to that point had been planned. Keep in mind, Kenjaku is over 2,000 years old at this point. He's experienced countless lifetimes and has explored the depths of cursed energy. He's incredibly smart, and even Mekamaru, who word for word, bar for bar, predicted almost half of Shibuya, got manipulated by Kenjaku and outsmarted. So when Kenjaku plans for Yuta to be there, which is almost guaranteed unless we magically drop Yuta into the middle of the arc out of nowhere, I think Yuta coming back from his trip to Africa early is the best explanation as to why he'd actually be there. So then, what is Yuta doing in Shibuya? Who would he encounter? And could he recover the prison route? Yuta would definitely be acting alone for the majority of his time in Shibuya. We see in the Culling games that Yuji and Yuta both instantly start agreeing that it's most efficient strategically for Yuta to operate alone, and Shibuya is before Yuji's genocide concerns become a big factor in his decision making, so I have no doubts that Yuta is acting alone, at least initially. Everything would play out the same until Gojo is sealed, and Yuji shouts across Shibuya to tell the other sorcerers. At this point, I think Yuta would understand that Gojo is their most valuable asset and begin making his way deeper into Shibuya to find the prison realm. Things would continue as normal, however, given Yuta's exceptional abilities, he'd make light work of any curses he came across, quickly making his way closer to the prison realm. I think Yuta, however, would actually encounter Toji Zenin very quickly. We see Toji become pretty feral pretty quickly after he's become a pseudo Edo Tensei thing person, and in that state he seeks the strongest around. And who's stronger than Yuta? I think here is where this what if gets a little crazy. I think Yuta is killing Toji in Shibuya, no question. But let me explain. During Jujutsu Kaisen 0, an arc set 1 year before the main story, we get to see Yuta develop and become an extremely powerful sorcerer by the end of the arc, and he's seemingly in full control of Rika's full power, and is able to go toe to toe with Geto. Geto himself was considered by Gojo to be his equal, and when Gojo kills Toji, Geto did not think Gojo had surpassed him until a year of training later, in which they had both become special grade sorcerers. Toji's plan from the start was to tire both Gojo and the sorcerers with him out in order to jump them. He wanted zero risks in fighting them. And Volume 0 Geto, of course, having 11 years of training on the previously mentioned hidden inventory Geto. Gojo himself also never described himself as the strongest until after Geto has died. Now that idea is a little edgy, and it's definitely understandable if you have some doubts. So another way to look at it is that Gojo makes it pretty clear Rika at her full power has the potential to kill him if they were to fight. This Gojo is leaps and bounds stronger than the one that put Toji in a headlock. The Yuta of the current day was just kind of outright shown to have gotten stronger since then. He has unlocked a main expansion, Jujutsu's most supreme art, and seems to have developed his curse technique Rika, giving her new abilities seemingly enough. This isn't anything new though. Gojo himself has gone on record to say Yuta has the potential to be as strong as him. Even Yuji mistakes the intensity and volume of Yuta's cursed energy to be that of Gojo's. It's pretty apparent that the author is trying to put Yuta on a kind of pedestal. Moving on though, I think Yuta is definitely killing Toji here, if Toji even wants to fight him at all. Toji sensed the intensity of Sukuna's cursed energy when it was unsealed and wanted nothing to do with it, and kept bullying his son Megumi instead. So there is definitely an upper limit to what Toji would want to do, but whether you think Yuta is above that limit is up to you. You could also point out that Yuji has sensed Sukuna's strength and thinks Yuta could take on all 20 fingers, but this statement is hard to take seriously from Yuji as it's contradicted pretty quickly after, as Oto tells a stronger Yuta flat out that 20 finger Sukuna is beyond his potential power, let alone his current level, but it's still worth mentioning. After Yuta defeats Toji, he's probably going to head straight towards the lower levels of Shibuya, where at this point he's probably gathered that Gojo is being held down there. In a similar vein to how Kenjaku met up with Mei to keep her busy, I think Kenjaku may possibly meet up with Yuta. The shock of seeing Geto may not actually trigger anything within Yuta like some might believe. Yuta throughout the Culling games has had this disposition of a kind of sadness or intensity, and that's only really brought down for just a short while by Ryu after pushing Yuta to his limits. The ice around his heart had melted. So why is this important? Because I don't think seeing Geto again will bring out that same response, which is important since Yuta after that point is implied to have grown stronger. So then, what would Kenjaku do here? Surprisingly little actually. Kenjaku had a complete disinterest in Yuta Okkotsu, even after learning what he had done in Volume 0. He could not understand why everyone was being his hypebeasts. More than likely, Kenjaku would simply release multiple curses to waste Yuta's time, in the same way he did to Mei, testing him, so to speak. I think Kenjaku may actually release the Smallpox deity and Kurorushi at the same time to scrap with Yuta. Smallpox alone was beaten by Mei, but Kurorushi posed a far bigger threat, relatively speaking. Smallpox is opening his domain on the spot as standard, and Kurorushi is rushing Yuta with a cockroach swarm. This fight is only difficult because of Kurorushi. Yuta for sure here is summoning Rika to rip apart Smallpox deity, as he stands no chance against Rika. However, Kurorushi can pose some threat to Yuta with his swarm if Yuta refuses to use the reverse curse technique. However, if Yuta does use RTC to kill the cockroach, then he'd close in on Kenjaku pretty fast. I don't think Kenjaku is willing to send Jogo or Mahito to fight Yuta, and I believe Dagon was sent to fight Naruto and Nanami by this time. Kenjaku valued Jogo and Mahito's curse techniques, and letting them both die to Yuta would be a serious blow to his Culling Games plans. Mahito is without a doubt trying to find Yuji, as that was his main concern in Shibuya, while Jogo is going to find Yuji to release Sukuna. Interestingly enough, without Toji there to kill Dagon, Naruto, Nanami, and Maki will probably escape Dagon's domain, and the three of them, along with Megumi, may be able to kill Dagon, as using domain expansion is a massive consumption of cursed energy, although this is up to interpretation. Let me know what you think in the comments on who wins this. If Jogo arrives, he'd probably just cook them again like before. However, this time Megumi is likely to be critically injured as well. 8 handles is a factor, but I doubt Megumi would be given the time to summon it when they were all pretty drained after the Dagon domain. This is the same time Sukuna's finger is released, which Yuta is most definitely sensing along with Jogo, and if you think he survives, Dagon. Here, I think Yuta is faced with an interesting question. Does he head to release Gojo from the prison realm, or go to stop Jogo from releasing 15 Finger Sukuna? Yuta is put into a situation where he knows pretty much no one can stop either of them, and he's forced to decide, does he rescue Gojo or save the people from Sukuna? We are going to explore both options, but I think the most likely answer is going to be saving Gojo, so we will save that option for in a moment. So let's talk about what if Yuta tries to stop Sukuna from being released. Yuta is going to make it to Yuji, I think just a little too late. It seemed to only take Jogo a moment to get there, however Yuta is likely much further away. Jogo is dying here flat out. It's heavily implied Kenjaku actually baited Jogo into fighting Gojo by telling him he was around 8 fingers in power to humble Jogo. His arrogant attitude was shown to be pretty difficult for Kenjaku to control, but after Jogo is given a swirly by Gojo, he calms down and kind of just obeys everything Kenny tells him, which was likely the intended effect. But even if you want to accept Jogo as 8 fingers in power, he doesn't really have anything on the level of Oto or Ryu. Both of these fighters were handpicked by Kenjaku to participate in his Culling Games, which are designed to bring out the strongest sorcerers and curses to optimize cursed energy, and yet Kenjaku didn't really seem to even want Jogo in his Culling Games, although you can chalk this up to wanting to absorb him instead. The most damning evidence is that Gojo sensed Kenjaku and believes Yuta can fight him, but thinks Jogo is weak, and kind of just makes fun of him. I think Kurorushi vs Jogo would be an interesting topic though. Let me know if you'd want to see that. All Yuta has to do is touch Jogo with his positive curse energy, and Jogo would explode. Sukuna makes this pretty clear. As Jogo is turning into small dead volcano bits though, I think Sukuna is going to wake up, and now we get to what happens when Yuta tries fighting 15 Finger Sukuna. Yuta would definitely be in a position here where he would have to attack on sight and fully manifest Rika. Knowing that Sukuna is a threat to literally everything around him, I don't think Yuta is taking any chances and is going all out from minute 1. To which I think Sukuna may actually toy around with Yuta initially, but fairly quickly turn up the power level once he realizes Yuta is stronger than he looks. I think Yuta is going to get pressed here, like badly. The overwhelming aggression from Sukuna is placed on a pedestal as a point where you stop becoming a sorcerer and start becoming a natural disaster. I don't think Yuta would even be in a position to copy Sukuna's curse technique either, as it's shown Rika actually has to devour a piece of you to copy your CT, but Yuta may not be close enough in power without his domain expansion to actually accomplish that. I think this battle would force both Rika and Yuta to break their limits, like in the Ryu fight, and grow in potential. Here is where I think the battle would be decided. Yuta would open his domain expansion, and Sukuna would follow suit. I don't think Sukuna would be the first one to open his domain expansion, since he was seemingly disappointed that Jogo did not try using it against him. So it seems that he has an interest in observing new domains. However, Sukuna may take Yuta seriously and open his own domain at the same time. It's up to interpretation here. I don't think it's a question of who would win the domain struggle. A technique described as being akin to a god and akin to an artist painting on thin air, the divine technique, Malevolent Shrine, would without a doubt overpower Yuta's domain expansion. Sukuna's domain expansion has the single best usage and statements in the entire series. No other domain has ever been able to be cast without a barrier that we know of, and none are as hyped up as Sukuna's is. Placed on the same level as gods, it may not be as complex as other domains, but it is without a doubt the strongest. If Yuta tries to stop Sukuna from being resurrected, I believe that he would be sliced apart by Malevolent Shrine, no different to Maharaga. Kenjaku believed that if the prison realm failed, Sukuna would be able to face Gojo Satoru as a backup plan, meaning Kenjaku thinks 15 fingers of Sukuna can go toe to toe with Gojo. The winner of that battle is not clear, at least explicitly, but Kenjaku is outright stating here he thinks Sukuna can scrap with Gojo. So then, what about the other option? What if Yuta tries to have Gojo unsealed by fighting Kenjaku? I think I've already given away my take on this, but I don't think Yuta could beat Kenjaku flat out. Not only does Kenjaku probably have a very good idea of how strong Yuta is, he finds that to be unimpressive and just outright denies he could ever be the next Gojo. I mentioned earlier that Kenjaku would release Kurorushi from Curse Spirit Manipulation. Well, in order for Ken to actually do that, he has to actually absorb the roach to begin with, which is done through two ways: being 2 grades higher in strength than the target, i.e. being grade 1 and absorbing a grade 3 curse, or by defeating the cursed spirit and absorbing it, similar to how Kenjaku absorbed Mahito. This means, by default, Kenjaku kind of has to be stronger than Kurorushi, and this is not a hot take at all. Kenjaku heavily implies that he wants to create a chaos he cannot control, and seeks to make everyone in the culling game stronger, meaning he believes he can control those in the culling game through either his strength or manipulation. Kashimo, someone who's having a time of his life fighting Jackpot Hakari, regrets he did not fight a likely weaker Kenjaku. This same Kashimo dismisses Ryu's strength and instead wants to scrap with Sukuna himself. This Ryu, mind you, may actually be weaker than the one that was swapping hands with an awakened Yuta Okkotsu and Rika, but at bare minimum, Ryu should be equal to itself from 100 years ago. Kenjaku is also far more versatile than Yuta. He has over 10 million curse spirits in his possession at the time, and it's extremely likely a good amount of them are grade 1s spirits with curse techniques. I don't know how Yuta would be able to overcome being attacked with thousands of different curse techniques all at once without just opening domain expansion on reaction to seeing Kenjaku. But even if push comes to shove and Kenjaku has to use maximum Uzumaki, Yuta is not surviving over 10 million curses condensed into one attack and thrown at him. Just 6,000 alone was enough to beat the awakened Rika from volume 0, so over 10 million likely has a far greater strength, as Kenjaku seems to be in possession of multiple special grades also. I just don't see how Yuta survives that. The clash between them would probably just play out the same way it did in volume 0, but with Kenjaku winning, which would be really cool to see. Or Yuta just kinda gets ragdolled and bullied the same way Yuji did, and the same way Mei was implied to be. Kenjaku may just let Yuta leave too. He still doesn't even really seem to care about him or Akari up to Shibuya, which implies pretty heavily he does not see them as a threat. In the end, if Yuta was in Shibuya, he would likely end up dying due to his own selfless nature, shown in almost all of his appearances. Yuta's kindness would be what gets him killed if he were in Shibuya. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I really appreciate you listening to me write out a fanfic in real time. Jokes aside though, thank you for watching. If you liked the video and want to see more videos on JJK, consider subscribing and go ahead and like the video while you're at it. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.